So, hello everyone. Welcome to Bookworms on Call, a podcast where we dig deep into all things literary. My name is Danielle, and I am joined by my terrific hosts.
Hello, I'm Evan. We've got an episode today, folks. What about? I don't know.
Evan doesn't really understand.
It also doesn't help that we don't really tell each other what the episodes are about before we record, which honestly I think is a format that kind of leads to some fun stuff. But also, I'm woefully underprepared for this episode, I think.
Yeah. Next episode of my episode will have a monster romance one, but not this episode,
Right.
Unfortunately.
I read so many bodily fluids, and I didn't even need to for this episode.
Well, you're just extra prepared for the future. How has your week been, Evan?
Oh, it's been a week. I've been closing all week, and closing when the people who are on shift before you aren't prepared. Closing sucks because you're doing a lot of catch up when you're supposed to be closing, and it just makes your job twice as hard. And also, I'm just really tired. I've been like so sleepy all week. In regards to like fun stuff, I've been working on my outline for my Holland Beast project. I've figured out some end story stuff. Like I've figured out a sequence of events for like the climax of the story that I am happy with. So that's fun. What about you, Danielle? How's your week been? What have you been up to?
Okay, so it's my first full week at school.
Oh boy.
And my first full week has always been interesting. More interesting now, funnily enough, even though I'm a returning student.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday, I completely missed a class.
Oh.
I just forgot. I scheduled it for the wrong time on my Google Calendar. I even went to the professor and was like, I'm so excited for class. And he was like, you missed it. And I was like,
oh no.
I did what?
Danielle. That's not a good look.
I know, it's not a good look. And I was like, fuck! Thankfully, the professor was very nice and understanding, but it does count as an absence, which does suck because I'm only allowed 4 absences the entire semester, or else I get dropped. So that's great.
Awesome.
Love it. On Tuesday, I was late to a class because of traffic, and I woke up late. And then I was late to 2 classes, actually. Oh my goodness. One, because my alarm didn't go off because I was working, because I work on campus. My alarm didn't go off, so then I didn't know that it was time to leave to go to class. And then Wednesday, I work in a library, so that's the context. I was shelving books, minding my own business as one does. I was being the perfect worker, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I crouched down to shelve this book, and I hear a rip, and I'm like,
Oh,
no.
Danielle.
And then my pants ripped.
Danielle.
Hitter to titter.
Ooh, Danielle. That's like, I'm like shocked that that's like a real thing that happens. That's like something I've only ever seen in cartoons. And then it happened to you in real life, Danielle.
Yep, I have the proof in my car. I have the pair of pants in my car. It's still there. Just
Woof.
chilling. So, I was gonna film a week in my life video this week, but after Tuesday, I was like, I'm done with this shit. I'm done with the content.
Yeah.
I'm done with this. Yeah. So...
Yeah.
Instead, I'm just
that would just be a
filming-
really depressing video.
Well, my last week in my life video was kind of depressing, but
Oh.
for different reasons. But it was just like so frustrating that it happened one thing after the other.
Yeah, no, I get that. Not been our week, Danielle.
Next week it will be our week.
It better be. I'm about to lose it. I don't know the topic well enough, so I can't really think of a segue. That's on you, Danielle.
So I was thinking that I have once in our 2 videos ago, I think, I may or may not have implied that Evan was white, and I completely forgot that you were mixed. It just escaped my mind. So that's the segue.
To be fair, technically, I am white.
That is true. But I did just say, like, oh, I'm the only POC here. And I was like, wait. I heard that out loud, and I was like, wait, hold up. That doesn't sound right. So I apologize for that. Nonetheless.
I think depending on who you ask, I don't count. So I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Well, that's stupid. But anyway, I want to talk about how our cultural identity fits in with our writing And I know, Evan, that you are half Mexican, I believe.
A quarter. My mother was half.
Okay. And I know that you don't really feel connected to your Mexican side. So if anything, you could bring up what it feels like to be involved in the queer community as a culture as well.
I could do that. I mean,
and that's something that we share, that we both share, at least.
Depending on where this podcast goes, I might actually have something potentially interesting to discuss in regards to feeling disconnected from heritage and how that correlates to writing. But I'll see where the discussion goes first.
I want to talk about that. For context, I am Filipino as well. Am I a second generation or first generation? I'm not quite sure. My parents immigrated here.
I think that makes you first generation. Because I think a generation,
first generation
is like you were born not in the country of origin.
Yes, I'm the first generation to be born in America.
Yeah.
Me and my cousins are. And my Filipino heritage very much affects my writing as well. So does my queer identity. So I feel like we could talk about that and we can have a cool discussion about it.
Sounds fun.
Yippee! My first question was, how has your cultural background influenced your writing? Are there specific themes or stories that you feel compelled to explore because of your heritage?
That's a loaded
2 questions
one.
in one. Yeah, that's a loaded one.
But I guess I should have figured the whole discussion was going to be a little loaded because it's, it's a very nuanced type of thing to talk about.
Oh, by the way, I feel like this goes without saying, but we are speaking about our own experiences. We are not speaking for the community as well.
Yeah.
We do not speak. We are not speakers for the community. We are speaking about our own experiences and what it's like to be artists.
I think, Danielle, since it's your discussion topic, you should go first. So I have like some groundwork.
A basis to go off of. My cultural background greatly influences my writing. It always has. In addition to my experience, I think that's like your experiences influence your writing, which obviously my experiences do influence my writing as well. I don't know. I feel like as a Filipino, I should be compelled to write stories about like family and belonging, but I don't. I write stories critiquing that, critiquing the ideas of family and belonging and cultural expectations that are set upon me. Like, I like to interrogate them in my poetry as well, and in my short stories. So that's what I like to do.
I mean, that's fair. That's a very interesting angle to go at it from. I'm pretty sure, like, there's a lot of people in very similar positions who just don't really know how to put words to it, but you figured it out. As for myself, my family is very interesting. I do have, like, direct connections to the Mexican part of my family. It's not like they're distant relatives. Like, I literally, like, talk to them regularly. The issue for me came from the fact that my mother kind of wanted to distance us from the Mexican part of my family. So where I kind of use my writing essentially to play catch up, to kind of like explore maybe some cultural stuff that like I wasn't brought up learning about or experiencing, and kind of like re-exploring that like in the context of the fiction that I create. Just like explore like what like an immigrant Latino family might be like, especially a particularly large one. What like kind of feeling distance against your will from that like larger heritage might be like, and like trying to reconnect to that. That's like a big theme in some of my stories, is like reconnecting to like a culture that like you haven't really been allowed to be a part of. So that's like a big part of like a lot of my storytelling.
I feel like I can definitely relate to that because like I just submitted a poem to a literary magazine called Apoy, and fuck my pronunciation, but that's another thing. That's a funny thing. I never learned Tagalog. Tagalog is the language of the Philippines, the official language of the Philippines for anyone that doesn't know. I grew up speaking Tagalog and Bisaya, but then when I got into school, I couldn't tell the difference between Tagalog, Bisaya, and English. So the teachers told my mom to stop speaking Tagalog and Bisaya to me. Which is interesting because kids learn languages way better than adults. They should have known better. And it's definitely because of racism, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, that's awful.
But I wrote a poem about the word fire because I wanted to write a fire-themed poem. And then as I was writing it, I was writing down like, whoa, what a joke that I don't even know that I had to Google translate the word for the fire in Tagalog. Yeah. I was making fun of the idea of being like a fake Filipino as well in the poem.
You talked about that in a previous episode. I thought it was a really cool concept for a poem.
So I was just ranting as I was writing, as one does.
Lord knows I love to I mean, I've talked about it before, I think, but like, Lord knows I love to use my writing as a soapbox. So, what a weird phrase, soapbox.
It's a phrase for a reason. You stand on a soapbox to deliver
Yeah,
a message.
I know, like where it comes from. I just think it's funny that like we'll still use terms that like don't make sense.
Are way outdated.
that don't make sense because like we no longer live in a time where the context for a phrase like that existing like matters anymore. Almost like culture changes. Whoa. That ties back to the theme of the episode, I think.
I definitely explored that as well, like the idea of interrogating what it means to be in relation to your culture. And I feel like that very much is applicable to me because like I was raised Filipino, but I'm a stereotypical Filipino-born American that doesn't know the language, that has like a separation of the culture, etc. And people will call me like, "Oh, you're a fake Filipino," or a coconut, or a banana. Either way, but it's like it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Like that's just what people have called me beforehand.
Yeah, which sucks
Because once you immigrate to another country, you obviously lose a lot of original, quote unquote, original culture.
I don't know, there's like a weird, I know I've seen like, especially like Latinos will argue about like what's like a real Latino versus not, and a lot of the times it's just like really like annoying semantical stuff, like I don't know, it's like such like a hard thing to
You have to talk about
because I don't it like it's such a nuanced thing. It's like I definitely think like sometimes like okay, what I will say is I don't think it's beneficial to the community at large to ostracize people because they don't fit a certain mold of like what you would deem as like part of that. If like you care about your heritage and like engaging with it and being a part of it, I think that's enough. And it's like I think ostracizing people because like they may lack something won't help them embrace the culture any more than they already are trying to. It's kind of like, I know I've seen like indigenous people and like Kanaka Maoli talk about it, but like the idea of like blood quantum is kind of like a white supremacist thing. It's not beneficial to like preserving the culture and helping the community to like be like, oh well, I can't be X thing because I'm only this percent. And it's like it's more beneficial to like, if you genuinely care about embracing your heritage and like being a part of that community, then like you should do it rather than like let people ostracize you because of like some weird made up blood quantum race science bullshit. Anyway, that's my diatribe. It's like if it's something you care about and as long as you're respectful, you should try to like be connected to, you know, your cultural heritage because it's an important part of who we are. And anything to keep the world community at large diverse and colorful.
So do you create characters who share your cultural background?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I kind of have like a penchant for creating Latino characters, specifically those born from like parents who are from immigrant parents. I guess I'll make them second generation. I tend to do that. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the difference.
Just because for me, it, like I said, I like to like use my writing to like kind of as like a chance to like play catch up and like re-explore that heritage. So it's easier to do that if I have a character who's like in a similar like position as me. So then it's like, oh well, maybe they also don't speak Spanish, or maybe like they don't like physically look of that heritage, etc. It's like it's easier for me to like I'll write them from my position but then pull in more cultural influence than I had like growing up to kind of, you know, again like re-explore that and like let that character have what I didn't have as kind of like a catharsis thing, basically. Kind of exploring like, I don't know which tier. I feel like this is reductive to like the whole tirade I just went on, but like what tier of Latino are they on? Like I'll have like white Latino.
But I get what you mean.
Yeah, I'll have like white Latino characters who speak perfect Spanish, and then I'll have like non-white Latino characters who don't know Spanish, and it's just like I'm just like exploring like different like kinds of people from that community as like just like a way for me to like try to reconnect. And I also have like Latino characters who like aren't indigenous, and then Latino characters who are indigenous, because there is a difference.
Yeah. For someone that writes a lot about their own experiences, I don't think I've ever written a fictional piece with a Filipino main character. Actually, that is a lie. I have written a fictional piece about a Filipino main character before. It was a story about, I think it was A Crying Cellar, that was published in Borderland Zine.
Mm-hmm.
That was inspired by, oh man, I forget the name of the short story, but it was inspired by a really classic scene where a young woman is given to a husband as an arranged marriage. The husband's one rule is that she can't open this one door in the house. She opens the door in the house and she discovers all of his ex dead wives. So it's inspired by that story, but I made it Filipino. That story was about how that woman, an indigenous Filipino woman, was forced to marry a white sailor. Mm-hmm. So of course there's like racial tensions between the two.
Yeah.
And there's a question of like a power imbalance between the two as well, especially with the age difference. Mm-hmm. I felt very comfortable writing that because I wrote it in a class where I was like, fuck it, I just need to turn in an assignment and then I'll put it in. And then my professor was like, this is actually really good, you should publish it in the school's magazine. I was like, oh my god, thank you so much. Aside from that, I don't think that I have written about characters with my same cultural background, like that have been like explicitly like they are Filipino. I've written Asian characters before, like just vaguely East Asian, Southeast Asian characters. My fantasy book takes place in Southeast Asia, and it takes a lot of inspiration from the Philippines, but it hasn't really been like, it's a fantasy and it's a fantasy world, so it's not like it's like this is historically the Philippines. Yeah. Like it's called the Divine Isles. It's not based off of any one culture or anything. But it definitely takes inspiration from Filipino culture as well. I even use some Tagalog in that book to inspire some of the world building in that book as well. Yeah, that's how I approach characters who share my cultural background. I just treat them like any other character. Like, I don't treat them differently. And sometimes, of course, when I do write quote-unquote Filipino-ish characters, more often than not, I'm critiquing Filipino culture through them. Whether that be like filial piety that we can't, that is a lot of us cannot adhere to, the pressure for perfection, etc., etc. Yeah, that's what I do. I criticize my culture a lot.
I definitely wouldn't say I treat my Latino characters like more differently than other characters. It's just I definitely come at them with like a more personal angle, which is why they're usually like a lead character. But in regards to like
Same.
How I write them, it's not really any different from other characters.
Yeah, I would definitely relate to that in the sense that like I don't treat them any differently, but because we do have something in common,
yeah,
there is like that sense of intimacy between the two, and sometimes it's just fun to like explore that with that in your writing as well.
Yeah.
Another question I had was, how do you balance writing about culturally specific experiences while making your work accessible to a broader audience?
I feel like this is one you can answer better than me, because I'm usually coming at it from like an outside looking in, kind of trying to understand like how like these cultural nuances within context that I haven't experienced firsthand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't usually try to make my writing generalized. Like if I think something is interesting, I don't really try to water it down personally. I kind of try to stay as faithful to it as I can, as long as it serves the story. The
way that I balance that is sometimes I just don't give a shit about the broader social audience. Like I used Tagalog in that short story that I just mentioned that I wrote about the Filipino woman marrying a white man. And I used Tagalog in that book, and I read it out loud, and I was like, 99% of my audience is not gonna know what the fuck I'm saying. And that's okay, because not all writing is meant for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you have that sense of, if you happen to know Tagalog, that is very meaningful to you as a reader to be able to see that on the page.
Yeah.
But if you don't know Tagalog, you can kind of get the sense, you can tell what I'm saying with the context clues. But that's just a sense of like, it's not made for you specifically, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think generally on like a broader scope, I don't really write for a general audience, because I feel like a lot of times that kind of hinders a story. I just kind of write what I think is compelling and interesting and go with it, and even down to like cultural stuff that like people might not understand, I'll just be like, well, you either get it or you don't. But also I like to not water things down, because I also like to put in things that people may not understand and kind of get them to go and understand it. I like to put in like words or like cultural stuff that like people generally wouldn't know, and like I basically encourage them to go learn more about stuff that like is in the real world, and like gain just a broader understanding of things that they may not be exposed to. I like to try to at least try to compel my audience to do stuff like that. Learning stuff is fun, and if I can get people to learn new things, then I think I've done a good job.
It is no coincidence, readers, that a lot of my fictional works have themes of anti-imperialism, and I'm Filipino. Like, that is no coincidence. It's a reason why the two interconnect. Have you faced any challenges in representing your culture in writing?
Well, given everything I've said,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's a resounding yes, without me having to really say it. Because it's like, there's only so much you can do from like an outside looking in. I like the challenge, is what I'm going to say about that, because on like a personal level, it's already challenging kind of feeling disconnected from it. It's on a whole other level trying to also then write about it. But I embrace the challenge because my cultural heritage means a lot to me, and if it means I'm learning more about it and exploring it in a meaningful way, then I'm fine with the difficult parts of it. That's pretty much what I gotta say about that.
Yeah, I've definitely faced challenges in representing my culture in writing, because I do not know everything. I have never claimed to, and I have worried that like I am navigating, like I am like pushing stereotypes as well. Of like where do you draw the line between stereotypes and truth?
Yeah.
And that's difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Because sometimes stereotypes are born out of truth. Unfortunately, it's just it is what it is.
Yeah.
And an example of that would be like a theme that I explore in one of my novels is filial piety. Like the idea that you have to do everything for your family and you have to honor your elders, etc., etc. Which I do honor my elders. I am a good daughter, by the way. Just because I criticize this doesn't mean I'm not a good niece/granddaughter. But I feel like there is something to be said between like the deification of elders in our culture.
Yeah.
If you say that to an outsider, you're like, well, of course Asians honor their ancestors. That's like what they do. And I'm like, okay, shut the fuck up. You're not wrong, but shut the fuck up. I don't know. I haven't really worried about like things like cultural appropriation or anything like that, because I am still Filipino. I worried about misrepresenting it. I don't know. If someone were to say that I was culturally appropriating something out of Filipino culture, I'd be very confused.
Yeah. Wait, your last name's Filipino too, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. I feel like if like somebody opened up a book by Danielle Mamaril and then was like, she's appropriating Filipino culture, and it's like, did you read the author's name? Did you look at the like back flap that has her picture, that has like the little thing where she probably mentions that she's Filipino?
But you say that, but a lot of Filipinos from the Philippines might say that I'm culturally appropriating the culture because I'm not Filipino enough.
That's true, because I've also seen Latinos do that. I've seen like Latinos from like, you know, Central and South America be like, oh, this person from, you know, like who like lives in the US is appropriating our culture, and it's like, that is very obviously a Latino person. I feel like it's I don't know, it feels, I don't know if it's disingenuous or just maybe ignorant. I don't want to say it's ignorant, but like people who like are of a heritage who don't live in the country of origin of that heritage are just gonna be like culturally a little different because they're in a different country. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's an unwillingness to embrace the cultural difference because, you know, you're American. I don't know. I don't really want to assume, but it's just weird. It's a weird mentality that I don't really get. But you were talking about trying to like not write stereotyping and stuff, and it reminded me of like an anecdote I have, because I have a character, he is Mexican, And I decided to just have his family be from the same part of Mexico my family's from, which is Sinaloa. And I originally like had like story tidbits where like they would celebrate Dia de los Muertos just because it's a fun holiday. That's cool. And you know, it's a nice holiday. I think it like, even just like culturally from like a premise standpoint, I think it's an interesting holiday. But then I learned from my aunts that people in Sinaloa don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos, so I had to basically just remove all the Dia de los Muertos stuff because they wouldn't celebrate it because they're not from that part of Mexico. So like I said, that journey of like learning about this stuff that I've kind of disconnected from, because it's like, oh, that's an interesting thing to learn about in regards to my personal familial heritage, that like we're from part of Mexico that doesn't do that. I just wanted to mention that because you were mentioning like trying to not like fall back on stereotypes and stuff, and I know like the Dia de los Muertos thing is like a big Mexican stereotype. But fun fact, not everybody in Mexico does that. I think actually it's more of like a southern Mexico thing for them to celebrate it. I think like in northern Mexico they don't really do it. But don't quote me on that.
I majored in Spanish for like 4 years. I should know this.
Oh, well, Danielle, Spanish is spoken by a lot of different countries.
That as well.
I don't know. It's not like you took like a Mexican history class. You took a Spanish class.
But we learned culture in.
Oh, you do?
Those classes
that's
as well.
cool. Anyway, that's all I had to say about that.
I know I touched on this briefly, but does your culture's history inspire your work? And do you think that there are any particular historical events or figures that have influenced your stories?
I don't think I could name specific figures, but absolutely, like, historically, cultural history, yes. I especially like to incorporate, like, aspects of, like, Aztec culture and history into my stuff. Especially recently, I've been, like, putting... it's a different comic from the Holland Beast project I want to do, but it has, like, a lot of Aztec cultural influences, and, like, the main superhero character, their powers are like very much like based in Aztec culture, and I had to learn a lot about certain Aztec stuff and like Aztec history to, you know, formulate the superhero persona. So yes, I do like to, you know, bring those historical things in. That's actually part of like learning more about Aztecs and like Mexica culture, because my family's also I was gonna say it's kind of got me to incorporate more anti-colonialist themes into my writing, but actually it was more learning about like the history of Hawaii that made me start incorporating more anti-colonialist themes into my Hawaii writing. But learning about Aztec culture and the Mexica has made it a bit more personal. So yeah, in that way, yes, I do like to incorporate historical stuff. I could stay and learn more about like actual like historical figures, but the opportunity hasn't arisen yet.
My culture's history has definitely inspired my work. It has inspired a lot of the world building in my fantasy novel. The one thing that I could think of is like Jose Rizal, which is a popular Filipino hero. He was a huge nerd and kind of a bit of a, I don't know if you would call him a pacifist, because he was like, fuck the fuck the system, but he was very like, maybe let's not go to war, like maybe let's not kill people because of it. Let's just all stop being evil. Feelings towards academia and reading and literacy, I think, have very much influenced Filipino culture and what it is today, because a lot of our Filipino folk heroes were nerds. I think that also emphasizes why Filipino culture is so obsessed with education and academia, because that was what our heroes were doing. They were in school. They were fighting oppressive regimes with literacy. I pretty much co-opted that into my own fantasy writing as well. Like, they are very much academics as well, because of their folk heroes were academics. And that was something that I found super duper interesting about my culture, and that I co-opted into my own novel. Yeah,
that is really cool. I feel like you don't hear about a lot of folk heroes who are like scholarly. They're usually like warriors and stuff. So that's really interesting.
So that was really interesting to me to see that a hero of the Philippines was like someone that was very scholarly and academic. And I co-opted that into my own writing, and that very much influences the culture in that influences the culture in my fantasy book, because you will see that a lot of them are educated, and a lot of them do very much value education because of that, because it's a cultural thing as well, sometimes to an extreme extent, which I have made fun of. I have like exaggerated it to an extreme extent which is what satire is. You exaggerate it to an
Yeah.
extreme extent to criticize it. That part comes into not really my Filipino culture, but very much my American culture. The fact that not to say that we are the worst country out of them all to treat their students, but we aren't treating our students very well.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, American culture and Filipino culture are so. I mean, they're syncretized as well, but there's a lot of conflict between the two, and it was really interesting for me to try and find a compromise between criticizing the education system, but then also wanting my characters to put the education system on a high pillar of value.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. This seems like a unique challenge.
It was a unique challenge, but I found it really fun, as any other writer does when they see a challenge. They're like, fun.
Yeah, I literally said earlier, like, I embrace challenge. I think it's fun.
I don't know about historical events, but there are cultural events as well that have influenced my writing, like the dancing as well. Mm-hmm. The food. Oh my god, the food. I love describing food in fantasy. It's my favorite thing. Because we're like more than halfway done with the questions, and I didn't realize how quick we were
I just feel like
them.
I feel like I'm not contributing enough to the episode, so I'm just like saying bullshit to like.
No, it's fine.
Make sure we reach like at least our minimum runtime.
If we reach a shorter runtime, it's fine. We said our runtime is gonna be 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. To be fair, we've done some pretty long episodes, so
we have.
Better be watching them, or I'm gonna throw books at you. Do you think we'll get like in trouble because I keep saying I'll throw books at our audience?
Well, we have one viewer who is my girlfriend who got upset with you for threatening them with books.
Hey, it's called giving you an education. I'm throwing books at you. By throwing it
at them?
Yeah. If you throw a book hard enough, all the words will come off the pages and go directly into the person's brain.
Oh shit! So that's how you read.
Mm-hmm. I am a helper. I help people.
You make a great librarian.
Mm-hmm. I know. I would be the loudest librarian on the planet. Not because I would be loud, but because the sound of me smacking people with books will be really loud and like resonate throughout all of the world.
The building.
Yeah.
What in the world were we talking about?
I don't remember. Something about food. It's dinner time, guys. We're
It's this Bookworms on call after hours.
Yeah. That's when I feel after hours is different from after dark. I was thinking of after dark. And I was like, that's the version of the podcast where we just read erotica. But that's not what we're doing. That's that's Danielle's next episode, where we're going to learn a lot about the fluids that orcs produce, which is a lot apparently. To contextualize that reaction, Danielle is a lesbian.
So gross.
Okay. That book was more graphic than I thought it would be. Like I knew it'd be graphic, but I didn't know it would be like I didn't know it'd be like gross.
Oh, it's gross. Yeah. Anyway, what in the world are we talking about?
Food, apparently.
Ew. I don't want to talk about food. So, do you see your writing as a way of preserving your culture?
Yes. I feel like just the way I've described how I engage with my culture through my writing, that's a kind of a way I see it, is like, a way to talk about it and like make people more aware of it. Maybe people who know even less than I do can learn some things and, just like keep those ideas and those concepts and those dynamics and those cultural things alive in some way because I care about them.
I don't know if I would say preserving I don't know if I see it as preserving my culture, more like telling it. I think that would be a more accurate description of it. Because preserving to me feels like something that you protect, and I want to share it with other people.
I guess the way I interpreted preserving was literally just like doing something that would create a lasting impression of the culture. And it's like if you're literally writing it down and like codifying it. I don't know if I'm using that word right, but like codifying it in some way. To me, that's an act of preservation. Like even if the book goes out of print someday, people are still going to own copies of it, and they're still going to be able to like share the story with people, and like they'll also learn those things. So like to me, that's an act of preservation.
And not to say that there's anything wrong with cultures that, like, in my view, like, preserve/protect parts of their culture.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with, like, closed cultures
that are, like,
practices.
closed. Yeah. Philippines has tons of closed cultures and closed practices, but nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm preserving Filipino culture, but I think that I am helping to preserve Filipino-American culture, and I think there is a difference.
Yeah.
I don't think I like ever going to be like a pure Filipino just because I was never born there. I never grew up there, and it was never my first. Wasn't my first language if I learned it when I was 2 first, and then I forgot it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll never claim to be like representing like Mexican culture. I'm just talking about like Latinos who are from families that left Mexico, because that's the experience I have, and that's what I want to talk about because I don't know what it's like to live in Mexico. I don't know, y'all.
Okay, so how do you see the role of your culture evolving in your future work? Are there new cultural stories or themes you're excited to explore?
Well, earlier I mentioned that I've recently been exploring more of the Mexica part of my Mexican heritage, which I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. I've heard it pronounced multiple ways. I feel like I used to pronounce it differently before I heard someone say it that way, but I don't remember. But as I've been learning more about that culture, I've been wanting to more explore stuff that's more specifically related to like indigenous Mexicans rather than just like broad stroke Mexicans. What about you, Danielle?
Yeah, I definitely see my culture affecting my future work. I mean, it affects my current work. I just finished a poem. I just submitted a poem about how I feel like I'm a fake Filipino because I don't know basic vocabulary for Tagalog. And I can see it very much continuing to play out in the novel that I am writing, ? I might put it aside for now. I'm not quite sure yet. With that one, it's very anti-colonialist / anti-imperialism. That's like the main theme pretty much, and interrogating that idea of it. And we'll continue to explore that in my work. And I think I always will, because I have tweeted out beforehand, like, the day I stop writing about anti-imperialism is the day that I am dead.
Yeah. I feel like I keep getting really close to the camera in this episode. And I just want to let the audience know it's because I'm really tired. Like, I was asleep for like 2 hours before this. And then I had to eat a bunch because I was hungry, and I'm tired again. I don't know what's up with me. I keep sleeping in, too. It's not like I'm getting up super early. Audience, if you know why the fuck I'm so tired all the time, put it in your review of the podcast. I don't know.
Write a review of us, please. Please.
Yes. For all of our doctor listeners, just tell me what the fuck's wrong with me. We'll bring you on for an interview.
You want them to diagnose you in the Spotify comments?
Yeah, basically. Does Spotify have comments?
Yes, it does.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No one uses them,
That's
though.
neat.
But
Oh. Audience, use the Spotify comments, or I'll throw a book at you.
I think my last question would have to be, we touched on the future, and what advice would you give to emerging writers from your cultural background?
Don't be a dick. Sorry, we talked a lot about like gatekeepy like people of X cultural group, and that's all I have to say. It's like, don't be gatekeepy. And I don't mean that in like a like if you're part of a cultural group that has like closed practices.
Of course.
I'm not saying write about them. I'm saying like if you see other people from like the same cultural heritage writing about something, don't like be like you're faker, you're appropriating. Just like be I always come back to this, but like be supportive of each other. But also if people are being gatekeepy to you,
Throw books at them.
Just ignore. Yeah, throw books at them. Ignore them because like they're not helpful. They're not productive to your life. So just ignore them. I do want to say though, I wanted to mention it earlier because we mentioned like closed cultures, but actually like a few years ago, I think like an indigenous author actually got in trouble because they wrote about like closed cultural practices in a book and then published it, and then people from their tribe got mad at them. So get permission from like if you like are like
Get permission from your elders.
Yeah, get permission from leaders, from like cultural tribal leaders before like you like if you're part of a certain group, before like you publish certain things, because you might accidentally be like disclosing closed practices, and that's not okay. There's another piece of advice. Also, I know you said people from my specific cultural background, but if you're choosing to write about other like cultures, be respectful of them too. A great real life example I have is in, I don't know if it's all of Native Alaskan cultures, but I know in Tlingit culture, it's like super taboo to like tell cultural stories if you yourself are not Tlingit. I know I had multiple school teachers who like had anecdotes about getting in trouble with Tlingit people because they would tell cultural stories in class. And we even read a book by, I don't remember if she was Tlingit, but basically the author got in trouble because she included Tlingit cultural stories in her book, but she didn't like have permission to do that. And so there was like a controversy about that. So make sure like you understand like the rules for like what outsiders are and are not allowed to do when engaging with other cultures before you decide to write and publish an entire book that may include things that you shouldn't be including. Mm-hmm. That's my advice.
My advice would be like, the publishing world is very white. It's incredibly white. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge that and to understand that it's going to be more difficult for us to publish our work because of it. It's not right. That shouldn't be that way. But I think it's okay to kind of acknowledge that and to understand that. Because if you're a POC, you're probably already known to the term that like you have to work twice as hard to get anywhere near as where our white peers are at. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge that and to understand that, yeah, we are going to have to work twice as hard to get to anywhere near where they are at. It sucks. It shouldn't be that way. But I think it's okay to recognize that and to work with what we got. And that also speaks to Evan's part, to where, like, don't be a dick about it. Like, don't be a dick to other writers as well. Because especially other POC writers that are in your cultural group as well. Because you are not competition with one another. You are peers. It's always good to be friendly with one another as well.
And to white writers out there, you're on easy street. Stop pretending to be a different race when you're publishing. Apparently that happens a lot.
It happens too much.
You really don't need to do it. You really don't have to do that. So
it happens far too often. Why? Why do white people pretend to be other races?
Colonialism is everywhere, Danielle.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Then you're just taking a spot from another writer that could have deserved it more, and that was also marginalized.
And you're putting your own career like
at
in
risk.
Jeopardy, because like if you get found out, everyone's gonna be mad at you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, why would you bother doing that? I don't know. It's such like a bizarre like
phenomenon
to take. It's so weird. Anyway. Not to end on like a downer note about white authors being really fucking weird. But this has been us.
Yippee!
Woo!
I don't know how to transition to Dexit.
Do we ever transition? I feel like sometimes we just go, and remember to always dig deep and answer the phone the next time we call. Because we will be calling. And and to pick up the phone next time we call, because we will be calling. How are we? What episode are we on? Are we on episode 10 now? 10,
I think so.
9?
We're on 10.
We're like halfway through like our planned season, and we don't even know the fucking outro. Anyway, pick up that phone, or I'm gonna throw books at you, and the letters are not gonna come off the pages. It's just gonna hurt really bad, and you will have learned nothing.
Bye,
Good night,
folks.
everybody.
Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.